You are the most useless woman I have ever met. Good for nothing. If only you had given me a son, I wouldn't have complained. But you do as you wish. For that reason, I cannot forgive you. My husband's words echoed in my ears daily. Stay, these words cut deeper. Then, one unfortunate day, he pushed me. I fell to the ground. Outside the door, my daughter stood, her eyes teary, yet filled with a newfound understanding of the cruelty she had witnessed. But today, what she held in her hands made the ground beneath my feet shift. She stepped forward and said, "Take this, Mother. I brought this for you." That moment, my husband was outside, unaware of the storm about to break. I might be the worst daughter in the world. That's probably why my parents married me off to a man who saw women as mere childbearing machines. Someone who had no respect for me. Perhaps I deserved this, but I didn't want to be a bad mother. When God blessed me with another daughter, I fought to give her a better life. Despite the arguments and fights, I sent her to school. What will she do after finishing senior school? My mother-in-law sneered. But my daughter, Rachel, excelled in her studies. Yet, the burden of our home weighed on her. She saw everything, my husband's anger, his taunts, his beatings. And when I could not conceive again, he labeled me barren. If I am barren, then how did I birth these daughters? I snapped one day. His response was chilling. A woman who only gives birth to daughters is barren. A woman is complete when she gives birth to a son. Since you cannot, you are nothing. His mother encouraged him to take another wife, precious younger sister, Joy. She will give you sons, she assured him. For the first time, my husband hesitated. But she is the mother of my daughters. If I leave her, they will be motherless. It was the first time he acknowledged our daughters as his. But his resolve was weak. I will take you to a doctor. If you can give me a son in a year, fine. If not, I will marry Joy. Not long after, his beatings became worse. And that fateful day, he struck me so hard that I fell outside, right in front of Rachel. And then she handed me that object. "Mom, Dad won't hurt you anymore. This will end it," she said. My hands trembled. My body went cold. I took her inside, away from prying eyes. "Where did you get this?" She looked at me with innocent certainty. "What Dad wants, this is it." I knew I had to act fast. Sweating profusely, I whispered, "If your father asks, tell him I've gone to Grandma's." Crossing just one house, I reached my mother's home. She looked at me, concerned. "What's wrong, child?" I placed the object in her hands. "Don't ask, just keep this safe." The storm has already arrived. Her hands went to her head in shock. "Rachel brought this? Where did she find it?" "I don't know, Mother. But everything is about to go very wrong." That evening, my husband was out. I tried to act normal, keeping Rachel close. Then Deborah, my neighbor, walked in. She thrived on gossip, but today her news made my heart sink. "Do you know the school is shutting down?" "Why?" I asked. "A scandal. A baby was found in the girls' bathroom." Mrs. Mary screamed when she saw it, but by the time they returned, the baby was gone. The blood drained from my face. "A baby? What happened to it?" "No one knows. They say it's the result of someone's sins." My hand shook. Rachel was in that school. The weight of everything pressed down on me. "Deborah, don't spread this news further. It might bring harm." But she shrugged. "Why shouldn't I? My daughter is innocent. Yours is innocent. It won't affect us." Yet I knew. The worst was yet to come. I asked her, "What do you think this is and why did it happen?" She replied, "Everyone knows this baby is the result of someone's misdeeds. What else could it be? This is a girls' school. Perhaps some girl indulged in immoral acts and gave birth to this child. Abandoning it like this, they lack any sense of responsibility, but they are cunning and cruel enough to leave the baby there. But what I can't figure out is where the baby went. Who took it? What happened to it? By now the news must have spread across the village. I grew deeply worried. If Rachel's father finds out about this, he will surely say that there is no need to send our daughter to such a school. Deborah said indeed no girl should study in a school where such incidents occur. Have you ever heard of such an incident before? I replied, when I was a child I heard that a girl from our school ran away from the hostel. We heard it as though something huge had happened. And now see, signs of immorality are emerging within the school. What could be worse than this? I'm telling you, take your daughter out of this school. I responded, if I take her out of this school, where will I admit her? Other schools are far away and the commuting expenses are too high. Sending her to school was already a challenge. Now it will be even more difficult. Deborah agreed. Yes, you are right. Anyway, I have to visit another house now. I said, yes, you will surely share this story there too, she replied. What else can I do? I've asked my husband to buy me a phone so that I can stay at home and watch videos. He said he'll get me one after the upcoming festive. I can't sit still at home, so I carry news from one place to another. And why shouldn't I? Neither my daughter nor your daughter has done anything wrong, so sharing this news shouldn't be a problem. I told her, listen, Deborah, this is a serious matter. Don't blow it out of proportion or it might harm you. Deborah replied, oh, don't worry so much. Nothing will happen to me. It's almost evening. I'll just visit 2 or 3 more houses and return home. Deborah never paid attention to her own household, children, or family. She spent her entire day sharing news from one house to another. Sometimes I wondered if this was the purpose of her life. She embodied the stereotypical nosy neighbor often depicted in films. My blood pressure was rising. The missing baby from the school's washroom that Deborah was talking about was actually brought home by my daughter. My innocent daughter believed that her father constantly scolded and blamed her mother because she could never give birth to a son. There were no brothers for the sisters, so she brought the baby boy home thinking it would make her father stop being angry with her mother and restore harmony in the family. She thought her parents would become happy again like before. Her intention was pure, but she didn't realize the gravity of her actions. If anyone finds out that my daughter brought the baby from the school, they would assume that the baby was hers. I had left the baby at my mother's house. My sister-in-law had recently given birth, so their house had clothes, milk, and diapers for babies. My sister-in-law is a kind person and she took care of the baby like her own. Now I only prayed that this news wouldn't reach my in-laws and that no one would find out my daughter's involvement. Then I would decide what to do with the baby. If needed, I would secretly hand it over to the police, claiming we found it abandoned. When I went to my daughter's room, I noticed her behaving strangely. She seemed to be looking at her stomach and stood up straight upon seeing me. I asked her, what were you doing? She replied, nothing. Mother, I asked, do you know anything about this baby? She said, I don't know anything, Mother. I just saw it lying there and brought it home. I thought having the baby would make Daddy treat you better. I scolded her harshly and even slapped her. I made her understand how serious her actions were. My daughter cried throughout the night, saying, Mother, I only brought the baby for you, thinking Daddy would treat you well. I scolded her again and said, if anyone asks you about this, tell them you know nothing. I kept silently praying that no one had seen my daughter bringing the baby home. If someone had, the news would surely have spread by now. I was terrified of Deborah, as she had a habit of talking endlessly about everything. For a moment I thought of telling her the truth, asking her to keep it to herself, but then I realized that if I told her, she would spread the news everywhere. I was deeply anxious. I spent the entire night on praying endlessly, praying for a solution. My husband, irritated, asked, what extra prayers are you offering now? Are you praying to God for another child? The doctor isn't available today. Tomorrow morning I'll take you to the doctor and see what they say about your condition. I told him the doctor cannot decide my fate, only God can. I am content with whatever God has planned for me. So are you giving me permission to marry again? I replied, why do you need my permission? You always do whatever you want. You've done it before and you'll do it again, but I have only one quest. Think about your daughters before you. To my surprise, he fell silent. I had expected him to lash out, but he did nothing of the sort. The next morning, the school principal and the police arrived at my door. My heart sank. I had a feeling they had discovered the truth. I assumed they believed my daughter had taken the baby, which made them think the baby might be hers. They entered the courtyard just as my husband returned home. I began trembling with fear, but my husband said nothing to me in front of them. Instead, he turned to them and, yes, gentlemen, what brings you here? He invited them inside to discuss the matter. I told my husband everything. Police then said your daughter was seen taking the baby away. Where is the baby now? We need to speak to your daughter. She has tarnished the school's reputation. We will expel her to protect the school's honor. Why should we let our school's name suffer because of her? A rotten apple can spoil the whole bunch. The principal added, you always said your daughter was a good girl. This is what your good girl has done to us. That moment my husband did something I never imagined. He said, you're sitting in my house accusing my daughter without proof. What evidence do you have that she gave birth to this child? Let's go to the hospital right now and clarify everything. Then he turned to me and said, bring the baby and come with us. Tell Rachel to come too. I brought the baby from my mother's house. They had dressed him well and fed him. He looked healthy and innocent. With the baby we went to the hospital, where test proved that neither my daughter nor anyone in my family had any biological connection with the baby. The principal seemed humiliated, as though slapped in the face. They couldn't say a word. My husband declared, if anyone speaks ill of my daughters, they will have to answer to me. We found the baby and we will decide what to do with him. You may leave now, the police said, until we find the baby's real parents. You can keep him with you. My husband replied, understood. If the real parents are found, we'll return him to them. My husband handled the situation remarkably well. Even when my mother-in-law questioned him, he managed to convince her without revealing much. Night fell and the baby was still in my arms. Rachel sat nearby. When my husband entered the room, I was scared, thinking he might unleash his anger now that the principal and police were gone, but instead, He approached Rachel, gently held her hand and asked, "My dear, why did you bring the baby home?" His voice was soft. "And I was astonished," Rachel replied, "Daddy, you always scold and hit my mother," she cries, "all night because of you, so I thought if I brought the baby home you'd be happy. You always say you want a son. Look, this is a baby boy, he can be our brother." Tears welled up in my husband's eyes. He hugged our daughter and said, "Yes, my dear, he's your little brother. From now on he will stay with us." Hearing this, I couldn't hold back my tears. It felt like a burden I had carried for so long had finally been lifted. I looked at my husband and he gestured to me with his eyes, silently saying that he had no complaints against me. He held my hand and I broke down in tears. From that day onward, we started raising the baby as our own without a doubt. The child was the result of someone's actions. The baby's DNA sample was already taken from the school. One day when the children went to school, the police came and began collecting DNA samples from the girls. After testing every DNA, they finally identified the baby's mother. However, the very next day, the girl's family left the village. To everyone's shock, that family was none other than Deborah. The baby's mother was Dennis's daughter. Perhaps this was karma for Deborah, who had a habit of spreading gossip from one house to another. She never kept secrets and exposed others' personal matters. She was so busy digging into others' lives that she neglected her own household, failing to notice when her daughter had gotten into such trouble. As soon as the truth came to light, Dennis's family fled the village. Nobody knows where they went. It was as they vanished overnight, leaving behind all their belongings. Their house was a rented one, and the landlord later revealed that they hadn't paid rent for over a year. The baby is still with us. We named him Joshua. It's been 2 years since that incident. I am amazed by how my husband treats Joshua as his own son, showering him with love and care. My mother-in-law often criticizes us for this, but my husband tells me not to pay attention to her. He even took me to a doctor who said that having children too quickly had weakened my body, making it difficult for me to conceive again. In these 2 years, we haven't had another child, and honestly, we haven't even tried. My husband insists take care of yourself, focus on your health and rest properly. We can think about the future later. Now that he has Joshua, he seems genuinely happy. He also loves our daughters immensely, playing with them, laughing with them, and providing for them. He ensures they have everything they need since Joshua's arrival. Something miraculous has happened. My husband's income has increased significantly. Money seems to flow in effortlessly, and he is happier than ever. He adores Joshua, who calls me Mama, and my husband Papa. When Joshua toddles toward me on his tiny feet, my heart fills with joy. My husband had always braided for a son, and now he has one. It's true what they say, sometimes we don't get what we want, but we receive something far better in its place. That's how we got Joshua. My little daughter Rachel wanted to help me, and she truly did. Her actions, though unintentional, transformed our lives completely. Dear viewer, we need your opinion about the story. What do you think about the entire story? Please drop your comment in the comment section. Remember to subscribe to this channel for more interesting and must-watch videos of this kind. Stay safe, stay healthy, and stay blessed. Thank you.